Hello everybody, welcome to the Scottish Rugby Podcast, brought to you by the Scottish Rugby blog. I am Cammy Black. I'm back after what can only be described as a manic 24 hours where I thought the entire household had coronavirus, but we're all clear. Involved a 4-year-old child having a nosebleed whilst I was trying to administer a PCR test, and then needing to go for a wee in the car park where you're not allowed to leave the car. So that was a wonderful stress-free afternoon out. And then everyone else in the house got their results back first thing in the morning, saying they were clear, and I had to wait another 3 hours whilst I was convinced the whole time that I had coronavirus, but I'm fine. So John stepped for me last week, so I'm very grateful to that. Apart from the fact that I had to edit out some legally dubious comments from the Patreon only podcast. So this is what happens when I'm not here.
And I wasn't even there either. See,
No,
this
I
thing
know.
I'm actually one of the more calming, presences around here, Cammy.
People don't know this, Ian, do they? Ian Hayes joining us. Good evening, Ian.
Oh, hello.
I don't want to hang him out to dry when he's not here, but I don't think it was me or Craig either.
No, it wasn't.
No,
it was
it's
Joy.
it's that other one, isn't it?
Yeah. I stayed very, very, very quiet. It's not like me.
Fine. Look, it was behind a paywall, and we've edited it out now.
Awesome.
Yeah, that's fine. Those comments about what Mark Dodson gets up into his private time. Anyway, that wasn't what it was about, by the way. Yes, so we've also got you hear the voices of Craig Manson and Johnny McGinty there as well. Good evening, Craig and Johnny.
Good evening.
Good evening. How are you doing?
So we're live at the moment on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, and Twitch. So if you're watching live, feel free to get in touch on the comments, and we'll read out some of the best ones that grab our attention. We are also, I've mentioned our Patreon there in passing, so you get a bonus weekly episode now where we kind of just chat about random stuff, a little bit about rugby, a little bit about other stuff. We swear a little bit as well. So we do that immediately after this. So you get 2 episodes of your Patreon. You can sign up at that patreon.com/Scottish Rugby Podcast from £3 a month. You can pay £5 a month and you'll get your name read out on the podcast, and we'd be eternally grateful to you as well. That just kind of helps us cover the costs of streaming this live every week and other bits and bobs as well. You can visit the blog as well, scottishrugbyblog.co.uk, for articles, news, views. You can read Ian's match report from Scotland women versus Italy that we'll talk about in a minute. And we're also on various social media places that occasionally I remember to update, like Instagram. I'm sure it's just for the kids that.
I can't be dealing with Instagram.
I keep thinking we should get a TikTok, but I don't know what we do. I don't really understand it.
God.
Can we not?
No.
Even the thought of it makes my hip hurt.
I saw people dancing and stuff like that.
I said on the Patreon bit last week, I disagree with TikTok as a concept. So
is that because of the involvement of the Chinese government, or because you don't like flossing, Johnny?
It's because I'm too old and I don't understand it.
And I'm even
essentially.
So, I mean, we're all done here. And I think if anyone around about my age who would try and do it, 39. I mean, I think you're just trying too hard. You've seen some proper cringy as anything stuff on there. On the few times that
it's not for us.
No, I have to have a PVG for my job now. I can't be hanging about on TikTok.
So we're not on TikTok. There you go. Anyway, so we've got a little bit to cover this week in the regular podcast. Shall we start? We can talk about the Scotland women versus Italy. Ian, you did the match report for that. I watched it back today. I knew what the result was going in, and I was surprised how well Scotland women actually played for large portions of the match, despite the result.
Yes, but it was very reminiscent of the last time the two sides met, but at Scotstoun. Even a lot of the same try scorers. Scotland at the moment, they just seem they switch off at the start of games. They give themselves a mountain to climb. They always concede early, and then there's moments of just defensive fragility. There's either someone's not got their spacing right or there's a weak tackle. And once that line's broken, they're done. And it's it's they don't seem to have learned much from that last game. Even the blight side flanker, what's her name, Giada, she scored at the at the brink of half time that week, and also during the Six Nations game. And again, it came off the back of Scotland just scoring, thinking, right, we've got 5 minutes to ride out to half time, we're back in the game, and then conceding points. I mean, Brian Eason, if he could, get hair implants, he'd probably pull his hair right back out. It's Scotland, they do play well, but then as soon as turnover possession is conceded, they get countered. I mean, you have to give credit to Italy. Some of the tries they scored were excellent, some of the offloading, but a lot of time it's just things look misaligned, and I've got a fly burst about my face. Right, sorted.
I thought you were just being expressive there, Ian, when you said the word misaligned.
Well, like an Italian, proper Italian, big hand gestures. And that's the fly.
Craig, it was. I mean, it was hard. I mean, like Ian says, you can't really slip off tackles the way Scotland did, and I think almost every Italian try was down to that. Was 3 or 4 missed tackles, and if you're doing that, any team is going to walk in a try every day.
That's the biggest issue. Is the minute Ian's talking about some really nice offloads and really nice handling work from the Italians. It just comes from that first missed tackle or the slipping off, just as you say, a slip off tackle, letting them go, and even though they're falling to the ground, they're still managing to get their hands free, the ball free, and they've got good support. It was difficult to watch at certain times, but two things for me. First things first, I am fully in awe of how these women work, handle a job, train as professional adults, athletes, I should say. Some of them are professional, some of them aren't, and still turn out to play against teams that are paid fully and don't have to work as hard as they do. And second of all, Jade Conkle is just. I've known Jade for some time now. I met her, the first time I ever met her was down at the Murrayfield finals. We had the How Harlequins had got into the bowl final, and we met Jade because all the captains had to be there for some press. And Jade is just a striking figure, and she has continued to be. And it was great to see her back on the field. She was a presence on the weekend.
The other presence for me, Jonny, I thought Rona Lloyd in the back, defensively, had an absolute kind of stand-up performance. I think some of the tackles that she was putting in at the end, she almost saved a couple of the tries. Kind of like, given the number of tackles she's putting some really big hits, and it's quite exciting, the prospect of her going over to France and to see what she can then do next. Yeah,
I think that's really exciting. It's great for her to have the opportunity. I think that's a good chance to really kick on, because it's an amazing setup that they've got over there. That's kind of the opportunity you don't get many places around here. And I think people as well don't realise, like we've said already, so many missed tackles, so many slipped off tackles. When that's happening around you, how much harder it is to keep getting up and making your hits every single time. I thought she did a really good job.
Yeah. And it is hard. I don't know. I didn't want to come on, and like Craig was saying, come on and kind of talk about the structure of women's rugby in Scotland, but it's really hard not to when there's a result like that, because it's not going to be. I don't know. There needs to be something fundamental, otherwise these results are just going to keep happening, and you wonder what's in it for the players at that point. Craig, you make a valid point. They give up the time, they give up the work. Some of them will have to take time off unpaid to go and play these games, to turn up and get kind of helped. You think, well, something fundamental has to change at the top in the way that women's rugby's structured in Scotland, and there has to be a way of. It's not good enough, I don't think, to just say Craig, oh, go and ply a trade in France, try and find a contract in England. That's not a solution.
It really isn't, because what we want, and what I want, what we need, I feel, is that the Scotland team training and playing in Scotland, because it's easier. It's easier to have your Scotland camps, etc., and bring the team together. I'm not adverse to the girls that are playing and being paid to play in England. I don't have an issue with that whatsoever. But if we could make them all professional, then they don't have to worry about getting up at 6 a.m, go training, go to the gym, whatever, then go to work, then go back to the gym or go to training at night, then get some sleep. It must take a toll somehow. And you're going up against, for example, how they manage every year to go and play the Red Roses. I'm amazed, because they're looking at players who are being paid now. Don't get me wrong, I don't think they're being paid enough, but they're being paid, and they are solely being what's the word? They're solely being paid to do that job, and they come in and they're so strong, So I'm in awe of the Scotland women's team, and all of the women that play in Scotland,
Yeah, and I think that's you kind of have to caveat any kind of criticism of performances with that, don't you? And that they've had the time in camp together, but it's it's limited time. It's not that there's a couple of professionals in England, and now we've got Ronald Lloyd off to France, but it does limit kind of the ambitions that Scotland can have as an international women's team.
Yeah, even though individually they're getting recognised, there's now actually I think in the starting lineup there were 8 players who sort of are playing professionally. I think 5 of them were at Loughborough Lightning alone, and then you had like Sarah Law on the bench. But you just have to look at the example of Japan at the 2019 World Cup. There, a lot of them they've never played together. Then they set up that club mentality, and they excelled. This is what Scotland, like we've been saying, they get a couple of weeks together. They've even had there's constant coaching overhauls. Unfortunately, Phil Doyle had to leave because of some COVID-related issues back home. And even though Brian Easton's kind of followed in his footsteps quite seamlessly, they just, for all the individual talent, they don't have enough time to be together and to train as a team together. So I think, if we could get a professional team, and even a semi-professional team that was Scottish-based, and try and squeeze into some other kind of league, like the is it 15 teams we've got in England?
Premier 15s, yeah.
Premier 15s, yeah. If we could try and squeeze in there, I think it would be greatly beneficial. But obviously with funding as it is, setting up a women's team would take some kind of I think it would take some kind of outside investment, but I think it would be the best way forward, certainly.
Yeah, I mean, but it's hard, isn't it? Because outside, it's which comes first, the outside investment or the women's pro rugby team. You can't ask for outside investment for something that doesn't exist to set it up. At some point, the SIU are going to have to stump up some cash. If they're serious about women's rugby in Scotland, they're going to have to stump up some cash to create a women's professional rugby side, find somewhere for them to play regularly, and then get the sponsorship in. Because it's hard. You're not going to get sponsors in, Johnny, to sponsor something that's a dream. We're thinking of setting up a team. We might try and get in Premier 15s, come along and sponsor us and see what happens.
Yeah, no, they definitely have to make initial moves. They have to have a solid plan for it. I think that Fosrock were involved in Super 6 right from the start, but that was something that they had a solid plan for. So it's not like they were going, oh, we might have some teams, we might have a competition, would you like to sponsor it? They've obviously gone to Fosrock and said, we've got all these proposals for all of these teams. We are going to build this semi-professional competition. This is the plan for how it's going to operate. Do you want to sponsor it? So they have to do something at least similar to that with a women's team, and they have to know that they're going to get into Premier 15s. They don't have to have the team, I don't think, but they have to have a solid plan, and they have to know where they're going with it, when and how, before they can get any money for it. You can't just rock up to somebody's door and say, we fancy maybe having a women's team, do you want to pay for it?
Yeah.
So, man, who's got the Hells Angels in there?
Yeah, it's me. I'm going to go shut the window 2 seconds.
They've turned up to take you away, Johnny. Come to reclaim their debt.
I owe them nothing.
But that's, I mean, there's no reason why. I mean, Wales have got similar issues. I think they've probably been a bit more brutal with the women's setup than Scotland. Scotland, at least, they're trying something. It's not necessarily built on the strongest of foundations, but there is something there to do a Celtic league, although there'd be travel costs, because I don't think the Ireland will have more professional women, but I don't think they've got anywhere to play outside of Ireland. Wales women have got the same struggle. So even if Premier 15s, if you aren't interested in a Scottish pro side, you would think you could have a shadow URC tournament.
Yeah, they've just finished that Provinces Cup in the Irish Women's Rugby.
Yeah, where they all had to change. Where did you see where they
behind the bins?
Yeah, Connacht had to change behind the bins, and they actually had footage of rats.
Yeah,
it was not great.
No. But yeah, I mean, Craig, is that the solution? Do you think, the kind of like you go for a kind of, I don't know, like the men's equivalent, I suppose, would be Argentina and the Jaguars, and you have a pro team made up primarily of your professional players that then essentially is that can play in a kind of a cross-border competition that then at least they're playing at a high level that translates to international.
I think that's the only way to go. I think the issue you have is, we can't. What you're looking at is getting value for money. The SRU aren't just going to, select 36 to 40 players and pay them a professional wage, just for and just be reserved to be Scotland players. They would have to be, and it would have an effect on then the Prem in Scotland as well. The Prem League. You're going to, where are you going to place these Scotland players that are being paid to play, etc. So you would have to have something like a professional team that would go, and you want to get fans down to get some return on the money as well. So I think very much, looking at the URC and how it's going to hopefully develop with the backing or the people that are behind the URC, you would hope that we're going to see a few more steps for equality or more equality that way.
Because you could see CVC saying that, can't you? Look, we've paid a big chunk of money for your competition. We're here to try and grow it. The fastest growing branch of rugby, I think, at the minute is women's rugby. What are you doing within your unions to develop that? And the answer would be, well, Ireland are making the women change behind the bins. Wales have completely torn theirs apart. Scotland are muddling along. And, I think South Africa, Scotland beat South Africa, I think, when they went out on tour there. So I don't think any of them are particularly cover themselves in glory. And you wonder whether CVC turn around and say, why aren't you tapping into this?
The most commercially successful sporting thing we've seen in ages was the 100 this summer. And they had men's games and women's games on at the same time, equal billing given to everybody, equal prize money as well, I think, actually, in the 100.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't be surprised to see someone who's professional, like their job is to buy into sports and make them commercially successful, look at that and go, that made a ton of money all summer, so let's see if we can do something like that.
And you look at No, you go on, Craig.
Sorry, this is my hands in the ruck is, and we'll talk about it more further down the line. But we will come back to the men in blazers controlling rugby as a whole. Whether it's your local rugby team, whether it's your professional team, whether it's your Scotland board, etc. There is no, until we start getting more representation on those boards, and it's we're not just getting we're not just getting talked down to all the time, then you're going to find that you won't. I can guarantee you'll never find a senior men's 15 of a rugby club changing behind the bins, and never mind a professional team's women's team. You know what I mean? I'm talking about a local rugby team. Their senior men are treated like the be all and end all within their clubs. If they couldn't get changed in a nice, safe environment, there would be absolute hell to pay. And this is we have to look at rugby clubs and maybe turn rugby clubs round upside down a little bit and say, actually, we're dealing with, the senior men get to play their game because of the junior teams, the children's teams, the women's teams, the second teams, the old boys teams, because they're the ones that are paying the money and not getting a huge amount out of the club.
Well, yeah, my experience of rugby clubs, of any rugby club, you go to any rugby club in Scotland or even around the country, and it's being run by women. The committee are the men, but the day-to-day running of the clubs, the people behind the bar, the people making sure that the teams, the children's teams are going out every week, that there's food for the senior players, all of that, the day-to-day and the fundamentals of the club are primarily run by women. And you get guys on a committee who'll sit there and they make decisions and, turn up once a week for the committee meeting and no doubt work hard at what they have to do. But the ones that are getting their hands dirty to keep the club running, 9 times out of 10 are women.
Yeah, absolutely. Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
I think from a marketing point of view as well, when you think about one of the biggest stories to come out of the Olympics this year, and the biggest story to come out of Rugby Sevens was the interview that Ruby Tui did for New Zealand. And then there was follow-up from that, the interview she did when she went back and was talking to, I think was kind of ripping out one of a news presenter. Like, she was the biggest star this year at the Rugby Sevens, and it was women's rugby. And it just needs the coverage. It just needs to break through. If it can break through and people can show more interest in it, then that's...
I totally agree.
Yeah. Okay. So that's Scotland women. I didn't want to talk that much about the problems in Scottish women. Yeah. I'm hoping the result will be better this weekend, and we can kind of actually talk about the rugby. But it kind of feels, I don't know. Like you said, like you said, Craig. Once you accept that, that they're essentially giving up that time for free, you can kind of criticize the slip tackles, but they know themselves what's going wrong. It kind of feels like kicking someone when they're down, when someone's putting in that level of effort just to turn up on the pitch.
Yeah. Yeah, I just, as I say, it's once Scotland rugby are equal with the best in the world on the support and the the support from the union and from the background staff, etc. Once they're on an equal footing with the men, I honestly, we cannot sit and criticise them too heavily. Obviously, they have to be criticised for some of the things, some of the mistakes they make, because that's well, we'd be out of job if we don't criticise people, I suppose. But especially John, but he's not here to defend himself. But on the other side of things, I think it's as I say, you have to first of all take your hat off to them.
Yeah. Okay. We'll do pick of the six now. So I'll look at the Super Six, the Super Six games from the weekend, because it was back on this weekend. Heriots beat Watsonians again. Ayrshire Bulls beat Stirling County quite convincingly, and then Southern Knights steamrolled Boroughmuir Bears as well. Iain, you were at the Ayrshire Bulls. They have a song for Pat MacArthur, apparently.
Yes, they do. And they've managed to make Pat MacArthur rhyme with Hallelujah, which is quite good. Obviously, because they're just getting it played through a phone by one of the coaching staff who will remain nameless. But the parts of it that I heard were absolute genius. It was very clever, quite profane. Obviously, it's
a rugby club song.
Yeah, would we have it any other way? But no, it's quite impressive.
I mean, it's ruined the Leonard. Now, since you've told me that, that's completely. I thought the Alexander Burke version had ruined Leonard Cohen's Hallelujah for it, but now every time I hear it, I'm just going to hear Pat MacArthur. MacArthur.
I mean, I know. Cohen started it, but I mean, it really kind of peaked with Buckley, and then it dive bombed with Burke. Now it's gone a wee bit up, but but it's.
I'm not going to get out of my head, you know.
I know.
Certainly a different take on it.
Ian didn't even sing it to me. He just texted me to tell me the song existed, and that was it. The song's ruined. And I love Leonard Cohen as well. So yeah, how was? I mean, it was Ladies' Day at Ayr. How was that, Ian?
Yes. Well, I due to traffic and whatnot, and also because I'm one of these people who just turns up not close to the edge of time. And also, I forget how long it takes to walk there from where I park the car because I'm lazy. But no, it certainly seemed to go off very well. I heard from Sarah Bell, who's sort of Super 6 SRU comms person. There was already dancing on the tables before the Bulls had kicked off because the Ayr Rugby Club 15, first 15, they'd been playing beforehand and they'd won. So it seemed to go down quite well. I think Sean Lenine, when he was on the Boroughmuir Southern Knights game on Sunday, he said over 350 women just slowly turn up. They had their own marquee and everything, which is probably where all the dancing occurred. But I had to be professional and keep my eye on the game,
It was a good game from an Ayr point of view. I mean, some of the offloading.
Because I was thinking it was quite competitive for a stage during the first half. As Pat MacArthur said in the post-match interview, there was a sort of a good 12-13 minute spell where Stirling had the majority of possession and territory, but Ayrshire Bulls kept on repelling them. They weren't maybe exiting well enough, but whenever Stirling came again, they won the ball back again, and eventually, the 2 tries just before halftime were a killer blow. Yari Fantini, arguably the player of the Super 6 at the moment. He had another fantastic game, and his double really finished off any chance Stirling had. Yeah,
it was the same again though, because I wonder. I know Stirling obviously were putting pressure on them, but the Stirling tries seemed to come when Ayr were quite comfortable. I think we've seen it before in the Super 6 where it's just like, we're ahead here, and they just kind of switch off a little bit, Johnny, at when the other team are knocking on the try line a bit.
Yeah, it's happened over and over again, and I think it's made a lot of games look a lot more competitive than they actually are. Like I've happened to be a few times where I've seen the scoreline and thought, that's going to be a really good game. It looks really close. And then you watch it, and then one team gets about 35 points ahead, and then just seems to kind of switch off, and the other team gets back into it. And I suppose as long as you don't lose the game, there's nothing really drastically wrong with doing that. but yeah, it does kind of give the impression that a lot of the games are much closer than they actually are, I think.
Yeah. Craig, what's your pick of the 6?
My pick of the 6 was my favourites, the Southern Knights. They looked very convincing, and they took again Boroughmuir come to the party looking quite strong, and you think they're going to do a good job, and I'm quite impressed with Boroughmuir's roster of players, but again the Southern Knights were just too strong for them. Very, very organised in the forwards, very, very strong in the set piece, but then had the ability to take on Boroughmuir and find holes in their defence. Sorry.
Well, no, I was going to say, I think out of all the teams, the Southern Knights are the ones that seem to have found a bit more of a ruthlessness about them. That they really did kind of strangle Boroughmuir, but Boroughmuir took the try. I thought the Boroughmuir try was really well scored. The lead up to that was excellent. There's not much that Southern Knights could have done, but out of the teams, and that's probably why they're top of the table. aside from the fact that the Borders team, and that's where Borders teams should always be. But I think they're the one team that found that ruthless edge, because when I looked at it, I'd forgotten that Ayrshire Bulls had lost 3 games already. It kind of feels, when you look at them, it's those, like Jonny said, it's those games where they were probably ahead for a lot of it, and then they've just let somebody back into it.
Yeah, I think where for me the big thing with the Southern Knights is that they are structured and they don't seem to have a they don't. It's not that they don't have an off day, but they've worked their defence, they've worked their attack very, very well. Maybe it's because Melrose have always been at the top level of the Prem before that, and so this team that's come over has got a lot of the Premiership side in it, and I don't know whether they're just used to being at that level, but the work, they seem to have a good balance. Whereas Stirling, for example, seemed or I thought had a really good attack, but their defence was a little bit lacking. And mind you, we've talked about defence being lacking in the Super Six quite a lot, but it seems to be that where Heriots managed to, for some reason, against Watsonians, seem to pull it out of the bag is quite amazing.
Well, that was it, because it's amazing to think that what Watsonians did essentially, which is to go lose to Heriots, then go and kind of seem to respond to that quite positively and have a very strong win, and then lose to Heriots again. Which I don't know if it's just that Heriots were, stepping up, Ian, because it's a local rival or what, but that's an odd couple of results that Heriots have beat Watsonians, because on the way things have gone so far, you wouldn't have thought that.
But what I've seen of Heriots so far, they're very much a hit or miss team. It's sort of like Dave Rennie style stuff. They've played a fast offloading game, and sometimes it's just not worked. And when they've come up against, for example, Southern Knights, they've been able to capitalise on any mistakes. But when things have come off, they've come off spectacularly. Like Stuart Edwards, the centre, Stuart Edwards. He scored a couple of fantastic tries. There was one there against Watsonians and one against Southern Knights in a game they lost, but they were very competitive in until they kind of lost their shape and Knights capitalised. So they are one of these teams that if it sticks, it sticks. And if it doesn't, it can unravel quite quickly. But like Jonny said, some of the games, they end up looking closer than they are, but they always are these spells of real competitive periods, and then somebody ends up pulling away sometimes.
Yeah. Jonny, you got any pick of the sixes this week?
Correct me if I'm wrong, but did we sit here 2 weeks ago after the last round and say there's brain dead needless penalties being given away that are costing games in the Super Six?
Yes.
Because that happens twice in that Watsonians Heriots game, in the 75th or 76th minute.
Yeah.
When Heriots gave away a stupid penalty to put Watsonians in the lead, and then in the 79th minute, Watsonians gave away a stupid penalty and Heriots kicked it to win. And it just blows my mind that this keeps happening. It's like every round someone gives away a penalty at the very end of the game and someone's got to kick a penalty to win. Tighten up your discipline in the last 5 minutes and stop it from happening.
Yeah.
The Premier Sports scripting, that's what that is.
For us, it's not like again, the officiating's been superb. I can't really fault it. They're given plenty of warning. They're not being coached like we've talked about before. They're just being told what they're doing wrong, with the bind's not off at the mall, and then quite rightly getting pinged for the stuff. And you kind of think I don't think there's any difference in the disciplinary displays to what we would see at professional or national level. The difference is that the referees are actually reaching for their pockets and giving cards where actually any other level those cards wouldn't be given, because the referee would probably decide to let boys be boys, Ian.
Reputations aren't getting in the way.
Yeah.
Like you say, I think the standard refereeing has been pretty good. There's maybe one or two things, when isn't there one or two things that we don't criticise at any level? But no, they communicate quickly. I've seen a good few 10-metre track backs for back chat, which is always encouraging to see because we want to stamp that kind of thing out of the game. I don't think you can have any complaints so far.
There's a good couple of penalty tries as well, if I remember correctly. This weekend, which not that I'm saying that it's the laws, so yeah, that's fine. I accept that, but it takes a fair bit of chutzpah from the old referee to put a penalty try across.
Yeah, I saw a penalty try for 2 infringements, I think, this weekend, and in the Lions tour, South Africa got 5 penalties given against them in their own 5-metre line and no penalty tries. So.
Or even a yellow. Was a yellow card? Was that the
yellow card given as well?
Yeah.
Both times. And I think that's it. It's just then everyone knows what to expect.
Yeah,
if you're going to do this, if you're going to dick about in the 22 and by the try line, giving away penalties, then I'm going to run under the posts. And although that was one thing, I think I just feel for the referees. The fact they have to pelt it under the posts, call the try, and then pelt it back to then card somebody who's at the other side of the pitch. I think just let them call it a penalty try. We know what it is. Just say, I'm giving a penalty try here, lads. I'm not going to bother wandering over there.
0.6, do like an H sign to say yes, there's a penalty try. Yeah.
That's it. It needs to be kind of, some sort of hand signal. Yeah. 2 hands. I like the 2 hands up, Ian. Instead of like a one in the try like that. 2 hands up. Yeah. Penalty try.
We don't even need to do this. None of this sticks nonsense. Penalty
try. Yep. Just tell them. It's fine. Don't need any signals. It's a penalty try, lads. On you go.
Oh, yeah. It's like, because you're going to have a water boy on the side of the pitch where, earpiece in going, oh, yeah, these were the penalty try. He'll relay the message. Or any
don't even need the mic up refs anymore. Just get the water boy to relay the message to everybody.
Or one of the 18 substitutes, warming up behind the goal line.
That's something you don't see in Super 6, which is quite refreshing. There's nobody pissing about in the try line, is there?
It's just, I think they run up and down the touchline a bit. Then it's right, get on.
It's almost like that's how rugby's supposed to be played.
Aye, there's no medics on the field for like 6 hours just trying to help everyone out and hold a bit of time. It's just like on you come and away you go.
No one from the medical staff screaming at the defenders to fold from the dead ball area.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Not that I'm still annoyed about that or anything.
We'll maybe touch on that hands in the ruck later on. Anybody else got any other pick of the sixes? No.
I think that's going to be a no then. Yeah.
No. It's interesting. It's mixed. I think from us saying a couple of weeks ago, it looks like it's going to be Southern Knights, Ayrshire Bull, and Watsonians are going to be the top 3 teams, and they're going to pull away from everybody else. That's not what's happening. So it's still Southern Knights, Watsonians, Ayrshire Bulls, but then Ayrshire Bulls are on 17, then Heritage are on 13. So it's still, I don't know, it's tighter than you would think. I think in the top 4. So it's still be interesting to see how it plays out.
It's been a really good contest, actually.
Yeah, I think the fact it's been given its own opportunity. We've said before, the fact it's given its own kind of space helps, but it's nice as well. Ian, like you were saying, that now club rugby's back, that Ayr were able to do that this weekend to put on a whole. It was like a festival of rugby. So come along, see the first team. If you come to see the Ayrshire Bulls, you can see the first team beforehand, and it's quite nice, kind of that it's mixing in a little bit.
Yeah,
certainly numbers are up, and also because the games have been good. Good advert for summer rugby, which, of course, I'm an advocate for. So it doesn't clash with football seasons, or particularly kick-off times on Saturdays.
We might come on that later then.
I think that ship has sailed.
It probably has. I think there was rants about that earlier, wasn't there? I don't think there's any other news particularly. Is anybody aware of any news?
There is the very, very brief update that I don't think we covered, which is that Al Kellick is still scary because he managed to get Glasgow a Friday night and a Saturday night. So
He did.
It's not all as bad as it initially looked.
Just walked on water across to Dublin and screamed in the faces of the two of them.
Went in, shut the door, and came back out 5 minutes later with 2 evening kickoffs.
Yeah, that was it. Walked in and said, "Oh, Al, you're here. Here's a surprise." He just went, "Friday night. Oh yeah, we'll sort that out for you." Good.
You've seen that sci-fi show Raised by Wolves? Where there's like a cyborg woman who can destroy people with her voices, like basically blow them up. I imagine that's like Al Kellogg.
What's the name of
she was high pitched.
It's one of Black Bolt from the Marvel comics, who's an Inhuman. He can do that. He can destroy things with his voice. He has to go around completely mute most of the time. That's Al Kellogg.
That's Al Kellogg.
No, but he's not completely mute. everybody knows when Al Kellogg's not happy about something.
He knows his power and he uses it anyway.
Absolutely, yeah.
Here, wee man, with great power comes great responsibility.
Jesus, is that an earthquake? All right, belters and bams. Then this is we kind of talk about what's been good and what's been bad this week in terms of rugby in general. Jonny, you got any belters or bams this week?
Yeah, I do have a bam, and I was going to save it for Hands in the Ruck.
Well, if you want to swear about it, you can do, or if you want to talk about it here,
I was going to say, I'll talk about it now without swearing, because I think it should be on the one that everybody has to listen to. And if you want to hear me swear about it, you can come back and listen to it. Exeter Chiefs have sunk into belligerence now with this ridiculous mascot. There's no defense at all left for it. They've had all year to come up with this. They could have come up with absolutely anything, and that's what they produced. And then they bottled it and got rid of him within an hour.
So this is for people that don't know, the Exeter Chiefs, who any regular listeners to the podcast will know, we're not in approval of their branding because it's offensive, because it, without permission, borrows from Indigenous peoples in America, particularly First Nations peoples, and they this week decided to launch their new mascot, Tom a Hawk, who is a hawk called Tom, who they zip-lined into the stadium, and he couldn't even get out of his harness.
They played the racist song while he was ziplining in as well,
which is the tomahawk chop that they all play and dance to. There is a serious discussion here to be had, though, because I know that some people grumble this isn't a Scottish rugby issue, but of course Exeter are playing Glasgow Warriors this year in the Champions Cup. If I've got that, is it the Champions? Because
the Champions Cup, the grown-ups one,
the grown-ups one, yes, that's right. Sorry, Craig. What's your one called? Is it the Challenge?
It's Challenge Cup.
Challenge,
Thank you very much.
The Challenged Cup. Sorry.
Hang on. I got enough of it from the pair of them the last time. I don't need. You're meant to be impartial on this.
I'm sorry. I'll stop now. Anyway, so Glasgow have got Exeter Chiefs, so there is an issue now, I think, for Glasgow fans and for any fans of Scottish rugby is, should Glasgow allow Exeter Chiefs fans to turn up to Scotstoun for that fixture dressed in headdresses and full Indian gear?
Nope.
No, and
I say absolutely not.
No, but they will. And the question for Glasgow Warriors is, would you let somebody into the ground dressed as a minstrel? And the answer to that is no. So why will you allow Exeter fans to come in dressed in Indian headdress?
Well, I think people seem to forget, or the ones who, whenever you say, look, this branding is racist, and you get your Twitter response going, "Oh, bore off, yawn, we've been through this." It's like, yeah, you went through it very quickly and you've not actually read any counter arguments. You made your mind up far before anyone said anything. I think it's right. Native American headdresses, that's the same as wearing like a Victoria Cross medal or a certain type of armed forces uniform. Those things are awarded to people of high stature, usually people who've, achieved something in battle. So what you're suggesting is that if you think it's fine to wear a headdress, you'd be fine with somebody turning up at the cenotaph in completely faked military uniform, try to take credit for being a kind of war hero. That's the kind of person you're relating to. And imagine the kind of folk who are saying that Exeter Brandon isn't racist and blah, blah, bore off. They'd be the ones who are extremely pissed off if anyone was to make fun or, try and take credit for things that, a British armed forces person would do. So they should shut the hell up. It's racist, it's insensitive, it's completely derogatory. And there's plenty of natural hawks that they could have named in Devon. There's a goshawk, so they could have called it Luke Goshawk, and then they could have had him walk out some Ross tunes. There we go.
And he's from, I think, is he not, Luke Goss not from down there somewhere?
I don't know. I'll Google it. Hang on.
I don't wonder. They can't cope. You cannot, it's one thing to culturally appropriate, First American people. I don't want them culturally appropriating Bros as well. That's just,
So they're from London, so you're all right. Well, Luke was born in Lewisham.
Well, London.
According to Wikipedia, but I don't know. Have you been up? Have you been on the Bros Wikipedia there, Cammy?
He was born in Lewisham, London. But I'm sure there's a whole thing where he moved. I think Richard Herring talks about him being in the same year. They moved, I think, to Cheddar for a while because Richard Herring has a whole thing about being in school with them, with Luke and Matt Goss. But that's close enough. Somerset and Cornwall are the same place, or Devon, wherever it is. They're all the same down there. If you're upset at me saying that, then why aren't you upset with the fact that it's branding?
Take a look in the mirror.
Yeah. What were you saying, Craig? Sorry.
Okay, I just you see these replies on Twitter and things like that, and saying, oh well, I'm sure all the Native American people in Nottingham are really upset about it too, and it's like it's that. People just miss the point completely, and it's not that we're not asking them to change the name of the team. They can still be the Exeter Chiefs. It's just a simple change that brings them again. We've talked about this being on the right side of history, and saying like I'm covering old ground, but it's like
with the classic one you always get from Scotland fans who kind of are not against the Exeter branding is always, what about the Highlanders in New Zealand? And you're like, well, that area of New Zealand was colonized by Scottish people. Yep. There are strong Scottish roots in the area. They are honouring that history. And perhaps they shouldn't, more for the reason it's colonial rather than anything else, and what those Scottish people probably did to the indigenous people of the area. But let's put that to one side. They're at least honouring some sort of link to the historic link to the area. There is no link between Devon and the First Nations people. There is apparently some statue in Canada that someone has latched onto.
See, I am a Highlander fan. Sorry.
So the one link would be that a lot of the boats left from Plymouth and Devon and then colonised America. So that's it. Makes it even more offensive.
Yeah, that's worse. Because I am a Highlanders fan, and I find the guy with the claymore a bit much. But they play in a place called Dunedin.
Yeah,
there is a River Tay in Otago. There's a Lower Highlands in Otago. It is like basically where all the Scottish people went, and everything is named after places in Scotland. So it's a little bit different.
And do you know where most of the New Zealand players that have gone on to play for Scotland come from? They come from that area, surprisingly, because they all have Scottish relatives.
Yep.
Well, there we go. No, I was saying to Jonny, actually, funny enough, we were talking about in our chat as well about. I'm now getting the feeling that they're just leaning into it now. The people who own and are involved with the Blazers of Exeter Chiefs are now starting to just lean into this and say,
yeah, they're doing it on purpose for sure now.
Yeah, and I just think there's saying well we there's being racist because you've just gone along with the crowd, but there's something really pretty despicable about saying, well, I'm not changing my mind, and I'm actually going to make it louder, and I find that incredible.
It's at the point where I think if you're deliberately taking a choice to name your mascot Tomahawk, that's the point at which the authorities should step in and say something now. You up to this point, you can say, look, you know, we all thought this was fine a few years ago. Things have changed. Society's moved on. It's not fine anymore, but nothing's changed enough for us to do anything about it. But this is a clear change. This is a deliberate choice now to take the branding that step further. And, you know, you look at the SRU constitution, for if you want to form a new club in Scotland, the name has to be appropriate and the branding has to be appropriate. And you would think Premiership Rugby must have those rules as well.
The reason that they've got a new mascot is that the mascot is what they gave up.
Yeah.
When they did their initial consultation, they said, all right, well, actually, we're fine with everything else. But yeah, okay, we will get rid of the big Native American big chief mascot guy. So that was their performative giving up. Look, we've got rid of the mascot, be happy now. And then they replaced it with something even worse. Because, like, when they started with Big Chief, I suppose they could say, like, it wasn't a problem back then, or we weren't aware that it was a problem. Now they know it's a problem because they did this consultation and the mascot was what they thought was the problem, and they replaced them with an obviously inflammatory new mascot. So someone's got to step in and say, nah, you're taking the piss now.
Yeah.
It's like, it's not just them. Like, the fact is, a lot of the time, you know, totem poles have, you know, some kind of bird of prey at the top of them. So it's almost like a deliberate piss take of that as well.
Thing is, you got to remember who we're dealing with here. There are actually people that had to have Tomahawk spelled out to them, because if you just called them Tomahawk, and I think we would all got it. You know, they had to spell it out phonetically for them.
Well, if they call him Tomahawk, everyone in Exeter would be like going, well, why is he a bird?
Is that Tony's brother?
I wonder if they had it on a rental or whether they actually paid for that.
Yeah, they're stuck with a suit now. I hope they are.
Can I get my deposit back?
I hope it's a custom job and it cost them a fortune.
Well, of course, they can't get shirt sponsors. Get them in Exeter.
Yeah.
So that's fun. Can you imagine phoning that going, can you sponsor, you fancy sponsoring one of the best rugby teams? And just give us 2 seconds while we just Google you just to check. Oh, crap. No, we're all right. We're fine. Yeah. Any belters and bams for anybody else? Because that was my bam this week. I didn't have a belter, particularly apart from Berwick won after having the first fixture postponed. So that's good.
Yeah, well, my belters was Club Rugby. I was really impressed that we had the How of Fife had a great weekend, and we were just talking about before we came on air, Cammy, and it was great to be out and about and to be involved in club rugby and standing on the edge of the pitches. But the BAMs for me is you may say that Edinburgh are in a rubbish group, but are in a rubbish cup. But my goodness, we've got some teams to play in the Challenge Cup.
You've got the baddies as well.
Yeah, we've got two baddies.
All of England's baddies are coming up.
Yeah, I'm surprised they haven't just thrown Exeter Chiefs in the middle of it as well, and then we can all have some fun. Having London Irish, Saracens. Not only that, though, we've got Brive and Poe as well. It's like, oh, great! Now we've got to deal with alleged issues with other people and cheats. Not only that, but we'll also go get eye gouged at the same time.
That means you can't see them cheating.
Yeah, that's going to be fun.
Yeah, and you know what's lovely is that a lot of I unfortunately didn't get to go down to the ERS last weekend, but because of other certain things coming up, but. A lot of people are really, really happy with how close they are to the pitch. I'm really looking forward to being that close to seeing someone getting fish hooked.
And here's hoping it's somebody on the other side.
The only other BAM I have is Alan Gilpin, but I think we might go into that in more depth in Hands in the Ruck.
Yeah,
yes.
We'll talk about global calendars and stuff like that in Hands in the Ruck. It's probably a good reason. As a point is, anyway, we're reaching the hour mark on the main podcast, so that's normally where we like to leave it for this week. So, thank you very much, Iain, Craig, and Jonny. For Patreons, if you give us a few minutes, we're just going to go and we'll have a refreshment break. We'll stay with you on the live stream. We are very slowly on the other live streams going to say goodbye to everybody. But for the audio listeners, it's goodbye from me and goodbye from Craig, Ian, and Jonny.
Bye.
Ciao.